Whoa.
Whoa, I got kicked out.
What's happening here?
Oh, I'm back.
It got weird. Okay. Got dizzy there for a second.
Probably shouldn't do edibles before this show, James.
Nah.
You're dizzy already. You can get it delivered like pizza here.
You can get mushroom edibles here.
What is a mushroom edible?
The mushrooms, like magic mushrooms. You can get them in edibles in Oakland. I have not done that, but I know you can because it's legal there. It's still illegal federally, but you can apparently in that city. But everything goes in Oakland. You would know. You spent time there, Keith.
You didn't used to be able to buy everything retail. You used to have to know a guy. You know what I'm saying?
On this episode of Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered, we talked about the American Real Estate Association, the new competitor to NAR. We talked about Homes.com, Rocket Mortgage, FinTech. It's going to be an incredible show. Tune in. You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, James Twiggins, along with my co-host, Crazy Uncle Keith.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Robinson, tell us about Diego Sanchez, the president at Housing Wire, and the conversation we had today.
We covered a lot of territory. He talked about how, in my opinion, he is collecting some of the best talent I've ever seen around data, information, and communication on the real estate industry. He wants to become the Bloomberg of housing, which I found very interesting. We got his and our take on the American Real Estate Association and that announcement. We dug in on what NAR could do differently, portal wars, and even more. It's a great conversation. Put it in your ears, kiddos.
Tune in.
Yeah.
Diego, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you here.
Yes.
Talk about all things real estate and fintech and mortgage and news, because you guys are a news source, which is going to make it fun to talk about today. So let's start out with letting the viewers and listeners tell them a little bit about your backgrounds, a little bit about, HWMedia, what you guys do, and then we'll dive into some rapid fire questions we do with all of our guests, and then we'll get into the meat of the news, because as we always say on the show, there is nothing drama going on in residential real estate today.
Slow news week.
Oh my goodness. I've been at HWMedia for 5 years, and it has been a nonstop crazy news cycle for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like literally all 5 years.
And every time you think it will slow down, it just jumps to like some other level recently.
It's wild. And it's great for us, right? Because we're covering that news.
Yeah.
You don't have to invent any.
What's going on.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of long hours happening in our newsroom and across our business, because it just hasn't stopped for 5 years.
Yeah.
Can you tell us when it will stop?
Well, he hopes never.
I'd like to take a nap at least.
Yeah. Maybe just a break. Break.
So really glad to be on the show and join you two guys. I think we'll have a really fun conversation. Yes. I'm Diego Sanchez. I am now the president of Housing Wire and
HWMedia. Congrats.
Thank you. Really excited about the promotion. And been with the company for 5 years. And most of that time was in the chief operating officer role. So a lot of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis isn't going to change. It's just going to be more so, and more of the business under my purview. So before joining HWMedia and Clayton Collins, who's our CEO, I had a pretty long career in business to consumer media, running various businesses at various companies. And then before that, I was in investment banking for a couple of years. And then at the start of my career, I was actually in education, for-profit and nonprofit education. So I used business school to do a career switcheroo, and have been in media ever since.
That's a interesting career path, investment banking and media, and that's awesome. You've seen a lot of perspectives on the business world with that background.
There's definitely a lot of perspective. It took me a little while to figure out, what my best use was, and what I was happiest doing. And it is, at this intersection of media and technology, and now housing, which is just a completely fascinating ecosystem. I thought it was going to be like a little bit boring when I went to Housing Wire, and it's the exact opposite. It is the exact opposite of boring.
Yeah, you need a drama llama on your shelf that just like you pull it out and like it runs through the room and knocks things over when you want to create more stuff in the space. So which real estate's just full of all the time.
It's a good merch idea. We should get little llamas.
They have them, the drama llama. They have actual t-shirts and stuff.
Like,
oh, I know. We need to do
put
that.
our pod on there. Come on. I want to.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's do let's get a couple rapid fires.
I'm gonna go first.
Start us off. Yep.
Yes.
Take us off.
All right. Cool. Because I'm our resident comic book nerd. So, if you were a superhero, which one would it be and why?
This is a good one. So, you know, I think it would be Thor.
Oh,
and the reason I say Thor is
break it down.
You know, long lifespan. You know,
true.
As a god, he
basically forever. That's a long time.
He lives basically forever, unless someone takes him out, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Superhuman strength. So he's got some of the Superman qualities with Mjolnir. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah. Dang. You're going in.
He can fly.
Yeah.
And he's got a good sense of humor, at least in the MCU version of Thor. He's a pretty fun character to follow. So yeah, Thor.
Has anybody used that one, Keith? No one's actually said Thor yet. I think that was the first
we had a fluffy Thor. But we have not had a Thor.
What's a fluffy Thor?
It's not. It was Fat Thor, to be clear. Like we said fluffy Thor, but we were making it politically correct.
He identified as Fat Thor.
Amazing.
But so no, that is our first Thor that we've had, and compelling reasons why. Very well played.
That's a good one.
All right, number 2, hit him, James.
Favorite book or podcast this year. So favorite book you're reading, and you can go to 2023. So favorite book you read or podcast you're listening to. So we always try to give people something to go pick up.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of WTF by Mark Maron. And there was an episode this year with Taika Waititi, who has actually directed a couple of the Thor movies.
Thor movies, yeah. He plays the Rock dude.
Yeah, and he's really, really funny director and actor who's done a bunch of movies. Some are a little bit more obscure, but they just had this incredible conversation that spans all sorts of things. And I just felt like it was pretty mind-opening for me to track that conversation. And I'd already be really into these two guys, but that made me even more into.
And the podcast is WTF?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I got to sign up right now because that's like my favorite phrase.
That could have been our real estate. WTF could have been ours.
Yeah.
Way shorter than Real Estate Insiders.
Shit.
Mark Maron might come after you for that, but it's a really good podcast.
That's awesome. All right, number 3. If you could have lunch with one person, current or historical, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I got to go Barack Obama on this one. So I was just a huge fan of his when he was running for president, as our country's first Black president. He has a very aspirational story. I don't think he got accomplished, nearly what he wanted to get accomplished. But he's kind of having a second run at things with Biden in office right now. So just pretty monumental figure in our country's history and over the past 20 years. So definitely.
Also one of the most articulate people.
Yeah. A brilliant orator.
Incredible communicator. And it's one of the things that I really like. I like to do myself. I like to communicate, via, shows like this, via writing. And he's one of the best. Yeah.
I mean, people could argue about policy, but man, that guy, he was just an incredible ability to speak and just, he was very articulate. So that's a good one, by the way. No one's actually said him thus far too. So,
nope.
All right, let's dive in. So tell us about HWMedia. And if I have my facts straight, tell me if I'm off. You guys were founded in 2016. Is that right?
Yep.
You acquired Housing Wire.
HWMedia as the holding company that Clayton Collins is our CEO. Used to purchase Housing Wire. Housing Wire has been around since 2008.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you purchased Housing Wire and you went on an acquisition spree, it looks like, after that. So you've
We
got
did.
Real Trends, Altos Research, and a few others. Am I correct with that as
Yeah,
well?
we've also bought Reverse Mortgage Daily, which is a news site that covers the reverse mortgage ecosystem.
So you guys have acquired all of these businesses. What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish and differentiate in the space?
Yeah, so I mean, we're really trying to be the premier media and information services company that covers the housing industry
Okay.
in the United States and maybe eventually globally, but definitely first in the United States. And what that means is not just covering one of the verticals in the housing ecosystem. So not just focusing on real estate or mortgage or title or appraisal and valuation or home building, but really cover the whole ecosystem. Because if you look at the major players and the major companies in the space, they're not thinking about it like real estate versus mortgage. They're thinking about the whole transaction of buying and selling a home. And so we really want to cover that. And there's a lot happening in each vertical, but there's a lot happening, maybe even more happening at the intersection of those different verticals. So
the cross-pollination.
Yeah, we think it's just really, really important. And another key aspect, and this was a big reason for the Altos Research acquisition, we really want to bring our audience great data and insights. And we think that, there's a lot of companies out there that cover, real estate or mortgage or maybe try to cover the ecosystem like we do. But nobody's really integrating proprietary data, strategic data in a meaningful way into that coverage. And so that's a big part of our strategy.
Mike was on our show.
Yeah, he was, and he's a hell of a guy.
You had Mike?
He's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, we had Mike. He's
great.
Yeah.
Altos is one of my go-to sources. I'm not an economist, but I'm a resident economics nerd. And so I have several sources that I go to big time, big emphasis on the nerd. Several sources that I go to, and Altos is definitely one of them. And then when I'm also confused, Mike's someone that I reach out to get unconfused. So Mike Simonson, great follow if you're listening, and great content. He's got a free weekly and monthly webinar that he pushes out that I recommend everyone listen to.
He does amazing weekly video. Like you said, he has a monthly webinar that's terrific. He writes a couple times a week for us. And we're starting to have a little bit of an unfair advantage when it comes to data and folks like Mike. So we have Mike Simonson, we have Logan Mohtashami, who is pretty incredible when it comes to housing market forecasting, mortgage rate forecasting. He writes for us several times a week. He speaks for us across the country.
He's another guy I follow. So you're collecting all of Keith's favorites.
We're collecting. We have so Tracy Velt, who came to us as part of the Real Trends acquisition, has been covering real estate forever, and she's terrifically sourced. She knows data really well. She does research really well. And then you look at we actually just hired our first data journalist, like true data journalist, in the past 6 months. A guy, Will Robinson. So. Danger.
Yes. That's such a good pull. I love it.
Yeah. It's not that Will Robinson, but
no, if only.
It is a Will Robinson, and he does a really nice job. He writes our weekly newsletter called Data Digest, where we are taking all this data that's out there across the housing ecosystem and really trying to distill it on a weekly basis with certain themes, right? Like, what's happening with the housing market, what's happening with mortgage rates. Those are kind of the key things that we need to think about as housing professionals.
It's like you've got 4 of the 5 Infinity Stones for real estate data. All right, I'm done. I'm done with the Marvel nerdness. But
listen, by the way, Diego, in case you can't see over Keith's right shoulder, it's his Marvel.
Clear who my favorite.
Very clear who his favorite is with the hand up there in the green.
Yeah.
I can barely see it.
Smash.
Yes,
Hulk
smash.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? I was going to say is you guys are doing something different this year. I think it's this year. I could be wrong, but you're blending the mortgage conference and the real estate conference into one. It's called The Gathering, and you're trying to bridge those two, which I'm going to ask these questions because it's where I wanted to go based upon the background. But I find it's interesting to me that you're not siloing people into industries. You're saying, look, the consumer doesn't give a shit that you're a realtor and you're a mortgage loan officer. Like you need to work hand in hand. You're almost trying to create a seamless experience through the conference, which I think is a new approach. So
yeah, like you said, the consumer does not give a shit. And actually, well, they give a shit because it's too complicated and annoying.
Yeah.
And time consuming,
I meant
right?
yeah,
they
don't see it as separate.
So, and my lens, like I have no background in housing before 5 years ago, except for buying and selling, my own home. And that process was ridiculously bad in terms of the consumer experience. And there's just no need for that amount of paperwork. There's no need for how long it took. There's no need to have all these different folks that I'm talking to as part of it. And by the way, like there's this title thing that happens at the end. I had no idea what that was when I got to that room. And so, there's this weird guy that shows up to do an appraisal. Like it is a really weird process for the consumer. And so that's the lens that I came into housing with. And I think it's just really important that executives across these different verticals put their heads together on a regular basis and think about like, what does the consumer want out of this transaction? And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We're bringing our 2 executive events together. We had one called HousingWire Annual that was focused on mortgage. We had another called The Gathering of Eagles, which was focused on real estate executives. So all coming together under The Gathering. That'll be in late April in Scottsdale, Arizona. But we're not just doing that in terms of bringing these verticals together. So we acquired RealTrends a couple years ago, and it operated as an independent and separate news site for real estate for a couple of years post our acquisition. But we very recently have integrated RealTrends News into the main HousingWire site because that's where all of our audience is, and that's where all of the real estate agents are, right? We might be a legacy mortgage publication, but like real estate agents have been coming to us for years.
Well, by the way, there's your 5th Infinity Stone, because Steve Murray's literally a gem. Like he is just really an absolute wealth of. We had him on the pod as well, and he just drops knowledge bombs of you just shut up and let him talk. Like let him go do his thing, because he's seen the industry through a lens. I mean, and Keith and I are pretty direct about it. I can't think of more than maybe a handful of people still in it today that has the historical perspective and the insights that that he has seen from all of the valuations and acquisitions and mergers that he's been involved in. It's
and to add a layer to that,
unfair advantage again, right? Like we have collected a really good group of analysts and experts, and Steve is still a senior advisor for us, and I hope he'll be a senior advisor for us forever.
Because
one of them.
He's never.
Sometimes he like Clayton. A couple months ago, Clayton and I just wanted to learn more about MLSs, because talk about weird, right?
Oh God, what beverage did you grab?
So we just grabbed an hour of Steve's time and just asked him probably 50 questions over that hour, and the guy just knows everything and everyone.
Yeah, and what I love about when he talks about it, and then I've got a question for you, but. Is he's so elegant in his answers, right? Like he's the opposite of maybe a lot of what social media pushes to the forefront nowadays, which is some hot take, right? He's very thoughtful and elegant in his responses, which is something that I find lacking in the world, and really respect about Steve's ability to see both sides of an argument and sort of present those to you. So he's a great follow and someone really good to listen to when you get a chance. All right. So I try to work in combat sports however I can, and you have the name of a very famous combat sports athlete. So I was thinking cage match with HousingWire, Inman, Rise Media. Like all you guys get in a cage and like last one standing. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah. Are those your competitors? Is that what you're building, or is it something different?
It sounds kind of fun, but yeah, no, I think they are competitors for sure. But the way I think about them is they're very pretty focused on that real estate vertical. And so, that is definitely one of the verticals that we're focused on as well. But we're broadening that lens to include, like, mortgage is really important to the overall transaction, especially over the past year and a half or so, with mortgage rates being so volatile. And then, the title process, the appraisal and valuation process, more and more the home building process. It's important to cover all those things. And so, while they may be competitors now, I think we're going to end up going much more head to head with the broader business publications, because housing has been so interesting for 5 years. You have the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, FT, and these other, broader business publications that are really building up their housing desks, because it's just a fascinating space. And it's like 20% of the economy. So it's a really important part of the overall economic picture.
And there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. I was going to use this as an analogy. Tell me if this resonates. So it's really, and you actually just mentioned it, it's more like you're building the Wall Street Journal of the real estate industry, whereas Barron's, a bit of an obscure publication, but that's more stock specific. So you're saying some of these other organizations are like a Barron's for real estate, deep dive into residential real estate. You're looking to go more broad and cover the quote unquote real estate market as a whole.
Yeah, and we need to be able to dive deep when the story is important. Like the commission lawsuits, for example, really important story.
What are you talking about?
I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. But yeah, absolutely. We actually, Clayton and I talk about being the Bloomberg of housing all the time. That's kind of our mental vision. And it's a really neat company that has an amazing data platform that they marry with the media and news coverage that's so important for those professionals.
Well, let's cover some headlines, because there aren't any. What's your take on, I mean, obviously in the past week, there's the American Real Estate Association that's come out with Jason and Mauricio saying they want to create something new from NAR. What's your take? What's your opinion on all of this so far?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I need to learn more about that effort. I feel like I don't know very much about it, and I'm not sure the industry knows very much about it yet. It's a little bit of a new concept, and a little bit of a flash. It feels like a little bit of a flash in the pan right now. So we'll see if there's any longevity to it. I'm also not ready to give up on NAR because I think that there could be a really powerful organization there if they just get to the advocating for the realtor and helping realtors figure out what's next and what it means to be successful in this changing industry. With low inventory, high prices, those are going to be baked in for a long time. And so you got to figure out how you're going to evolve and still win your fair share of deals. So I'm not ready to give up on NAR. I think, I hope to see something interesting and positive happen with whoever they name as their permanent CEO. I don't know if Nakia Wright is going to eventually be that, or if it's going to be someone else. But yeah, they just need a big advocate for the realtor and somebody that's going to be willing to fight a little bit. Because
do you think they should stick with someone like Nakia? I use her as an example of somebody from outside the industry to reshape the association, or do you think they should hire somebody within the industry? What's your take?
I think it could be pretty interesting to bring someone in, maybe from one of the state associations that's doing well, and that maybe is a little bit more forward-looking and kind of fighting for their member. I don't know who that could be. There's some big state realtor associations across the country, some of which are progressive and some of which aren't. But that could be interesting. An outsider is interesting because maybe they'll bring the lens of you got to get to it.
Yeah.
This industry is kind of leaving
Yeah.
you behind a little bit with some of these battles that are taking place. So maybe an outsider could see that a little bit more clearly than an insider. So I don't know. It's really tough to say.
Is there any chance you think of NAR going away because they're not staying rellike do you actually a
Yeah.
lot of people are saying that? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
I think if they don't like shape up really quickly and figure out what's happening with these lawsuits and how they're going to settle, because I think they probably have to settle, and don't start figuring out how they're going to be an advocate for the realtor and what the realtor needs to become to be competitive. I don't know why you would pay those annual dues if you're not getting your money's worth from it. And I feel like there are a lot of realtors right now who don't feel like they're getting their money's worth.
You know, it's interesting. I posed this question on Facebook. I asked this because I've seen the NAR's new.
That's a great place to go for really
Well, I
thoughtful
didn't
feedback.
I didn't say anything. I just asked a question.
I read the
which
post.
was,
I read the post.
do we think the consumer understands the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent, and actually care? And overwhelming feedback, 98% was like, nobody gives a shit. Like, basically, at the end of the day. Now, that could be that NAR is trying to create an ad campaign to change that, which is why I didn't make any comments on it. But then I almost asked this question, like, are we just fighting a lost battle? Like, do we really need to focus on trying to explain what a realtor is?
Yeah,
And
why? Like, who cares?
like, what does that even mean? And does it also seem weird that like we're talking about our code of ethics when we don't really get to use the word ethics right now based upon all of the nonsense that we've done? I mean,
I think it's a really interesting point. And I mean that the brand name of realtor versus just being a real estate agent. I would think that there needs to be a trade organization for the profession, for the real estate agent profession. You don't necessarily have to like go to the mat defending the word realtor or the brand name realtor.
Well, look, it's almost sorry to interrupt, but it's the human being who's thinking about buying or selling a house, like Kleenex. I'll ask you for a Kleenex, and that really means I want a tissue, but no one calls it Kleenex, right?
Yeah.
So they run around like it's that they've done too good a job. My interpretation of it is they see them as interchangeable. They don't understand that there's a difference in the same way that I don't understand that there's a difference between Kleenex and some other brand of tissue. I just have a runny nose, right? That's how I interpret it. And when the human being is thinking about buying or selling their home, they aren't stuck in trying to figure out what label. They will say real estate agent and realtor interchangeably. They just want the solution to their problem. Like, who cares? They've done too good a job.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it should be interchangeable. I mean, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, you want a real estate agent. You want somebody who's going to help you, who's going to advise you while you buy or sell your home.
Yeah, maybe that's my point, is they don't care what you call it. You call yourself whatever you want. Just help me with my problem, right?
Yeah. So that's then I raised the question because I'm sitting here going, why are we spending all this money trying to educate people on a realtor? Like, I'm just like, can we go down a different road with that cash and do something else with it?
I think that's smart. I think it's more about the profession and the professionals in that profession need some help and need some advocacy if they're going to be successful. And so, maybe it's less about that label and just more about like the profession.
When to push back a little, just even though you're our esteemed guest and you have the name of a UFC fighter, so don't come at me. But look, if all NAR did, I've said this on the pod before. I know I've said it before. I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself for our regular listeners. But number one, it's $150 a year. So like, relax, everybody. Calm down. It's $150 matters. It does. But it's $156 a year. Number two, the Political Action Committee, speaking of advocacy for NAR, has done a very good job. Now, there's a bunch of things that NAR hasn't done correctly, but we have a pod. We'll put it in the show notes where we really unpack all the things that NAR has done to benefit the industry. They just aren't great at PR, like internal. They don't sell into their membership very well the things that they have done to provide value. And I think if they did a better job of that, it would help everyone's estimation of what NAR has done go up a lot.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Actually, I mean, I think some of their fair housing efforts have been really interesting, and you know, they seem to be willing to tackle some sensitive issues, which is good. It's good to do that, but they have just really screwed up this response to these commission lawsuits. Like I just don't know how they could be doing any worse. It would be hard to do worse. And so they just got to get back on track with that.
What does better look like? Like, we know what worse looks like. That's what we've experienced. I think
yeah, you know,
what does better look like?
We had a debate that we aired between Michael Ketchmark, who's the plaintiff's attorney,
and Anthony, yes, I know,
in the Sitzer Burnett case, and Anthony Lamacchia, who's a broker in Massachusetts, where I guess you know probably spread farther than that at this point.
Sure.
And you know, there were a lot of personal attacks and that I could have done without. But
I agree.
What I noticed is that you know, Ketchmark actually doesn't seem to know a lot about the actual home buying process. And you know, like when he refers to things like, down payment assistance can solve the problem of first-time home buyers and not being able to access homes. Well, we all know that, like, down payment assistance, they're great programs, but like logistically to spread that in the way that would be needed to truly help all first-time home buyers in this country is probably not going to happen, right? So like there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the home buying process and what the buyer's agent does. And I just don't think NAR has done a good job of defending the buyer's agent, like at a very, like, through a consumer lens, right? Making it simple. Like these are the folks that help put first-time home buyers into homes, and they're valuable. And yeah, there's some ways that we should change the transaction and change the way the compensation works. But at the end of the day, like, buyer's agents shouldn't go away, and they should be arguing simply like that, as opposed to, I don't know what they did in the courtroom.
Well, they didn't have, so in fairness to NAR, their chief marketing officer wasn't there for a year and a half. They just replaced, they finally filled that role with Suzanne, who's now been there for like basically a month and a half. So they had nobody in charge of marketing or PR, and the team that was there was running around. What's interesting to me, Diego, is I feel like they keep using the same playbook. It's almost like there's this silo of, let's ask our board, who have no concept of what the consumer actually wants, to be clear. And I'm saying that directly. Like, you have a bunch of people who live in this box of like association world, and they push all their ideas against the people in the box versus outside the box. You got like 90% of the industry saying, I don't like any of this. Then you got the 10% who's in charge saying this is how we should do it. And it's the same playbook for like 100 years. And I want to like shake somebody and go, just throw all your people out and just go get a new group of people that are like talking to consumers and ask them questions. Because you do a Facebook post and 130 people are saying one thing, and you can find the 2 people that are board members at NAR as the dissenters in the comments, and you're going, did you read the 130 comments above? Like, it's just crazy, because it's such a fundamental organization that's so far off track. I like cannot figure out how to slap somebody, bringing combat in.
Thanks.
You know, it's
I mean, simplification would probably help of leadership structure. But yeah, like just getting down to the fundamental values of a consumer either buying or selling a home, and the way that a real estate agent or realtor can be so incredibly helpful in that process. Like you're helping people achieve the American dream, and that should be the focus all the time. And seller's agents can be extremely valuable and help you get more money from your sale. And buyer's agents can be extremely helpful as well, and help you negotiate the best price and deal with all these things that, like, as a first-time home buyer, you have no idea what's going on. And so that advisory capacity is really fundamental. And I don't know why they don't just completely lean in on that trusted advisor role, on both sides of the transaction, because it's so important.
But don't you? I mean, they've done it nationally, right? They've done television ads that talk about it talks about the things that you're alluding to, and then they slide in the whole, realtor part, right? But they have tried to communicate to the masses the need for a real estate professional. Don't you think? Or am I off?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, realtor.com is could be a great opportunity to spread that message, but they sold the rights to that.
They did, and they shouldn't have, and I think we all agree with that, but they don't have a time machine. They can't go back in time. Yeah.
Well, and realtor.com ads are actually more relevant than even NARs are. That's the funny part. No, they are. I'm not trying to rag on them, but like realtor.com's TV ads are better. And they're not even.
And you look at some of the stuff that homes.com is starting to do, and that Zillow's been doing, and they have that consumer message down much more than NAR does.
I guess maybe it's just the guy who used to go on listing presentations in me, but like where I think they really missed is not so much it's a really intimate transaction, right? You had a terrible experience with your real estate professional when you did your purchase, and that mattered to you, right? That I could feel it when you talked about it, and I almost wanted to apologize on behalf of the industry, right? And I think where NAR has really failed is actually in the internal marketing plan to their constituency, to the people that are part of it, because if you're a member of NAR, you don't really feel or understand the value that they're providing to you, and candidly, the intimacy of the transactional relationship lies at the local level with the human being that you interact with. So like the reason that the portals have the massive ad spend is because they want the eyeballs, because that's how they make money, right? And I think NAR should up their internal marketing plan. And of course, you can always optimize and be better at their external, but I don't think on a scale of 1 to 10, it's not a 0, right? They've taken their shot. Where I think they're a 0 on is their internal marketing plan.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that there are probably just too many real estate agents, chasing too few deals. And so, maybe one thing that the NAR could do is think about even more professionalization, and maybe $156 a year is too little. Right?
Amen.
And so, what I would love to see is them help facilitate a little bit of a flight to quality over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And these are the real trusted advisors in your community who can really make a difference when you buy or sell a home. So
it'd be interesting, James, for your
the internal thing could be more important.
Yeah, James, for your next Facebook post, see how many of you would be okay if fees went to $1,156.
No, everyone's going to lose their mind.
See what that comment section.
Stop. Like, everybody's like on the thing is so I did a presentation last week in Los Angeles, and I asked the room, how many of you are happy with NAR? Raise your hands. Of course, nobody raised their hand. I'm like, how many of you in the room would like to see a different association start? And everybody raised their hand. It was like, how many of you actually know what NAR does for you? Raise your hand. It's like, nobody raised their hand. I said, well, let me just explain 2 things to you and why I think a new trade association is a bad idea. And then you can tell me if you still want to go down this path. I was like, number 1 is there's only one organization that represents you that has the possibility of getting your compensation financed into a loan. And that's the National Association of Realtors. It's not going to be the American Real Estate Association. They have no influence. I said, number 2 is, do you all enjoy your 1099 status? They're all like, yeah. It's like, okay, that's literally something NAR fights every year to make sure that you still have. And if you didn't, 80% of you in the room, you wouldn't be here. You'd be unemployed, because brokers in the room here aren't going to put all of you on W-2 and pay you a minimum wage. Like, there's your freaking message for that's it. Just stick with that for the next 24 months. And people go, oh shit, maybe I should be paying attention. Let me shift this just for time, because we're going to go on a soapbox forever. I really want to get into this part, because you guys are really doing a great job of this. So you're covering mortgage and fintech. And I love the tie-in between residential and all of this. So what significant changes do you see coming? Let me ask this differently. What do you see coming from fintech and mortgage that might come into real estate and disrupt it? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's looking in the space, but we're not looking over here. So
yeah, I mean, just an easier transaction, and whether that is digitally enabled, less paperwork. If I want to notarize remotely as opposed to having to track someone down, I can do that. I think all aspects of the transaction have room to improve, and get smoother, more digital. And so there's just a lot of tech, because mortgage is so complicated and so highly regulated. There's just a lot of tech that's been brought to bear that helps smooth out the transaction. And I think that when you link up what's happening in real estate with what's happening in mortgage and then title, and then, oh, by the way, appraisal, like if you can have a smoother transaction that is a little bit more end to end and seamless. I don't know if it'll ever be fully seamless, because I do like the idea of having a real estate advisor and a mortgage advisor. I think they can bring complementary skills, and they can be a really dynamic duo for the consumer. They just need to collaborate better, and it needs to be a better handoff, so that it doesn't feel like such a handoff. It feels more.
Do you think it'll really happen? Like I've been in the real estate industry almost
Forever.
25 years. Yeah. Forever. Whoa, take it easy.
I mean, people have been talking about this.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. I mean, you are old though.
Wow. I've been hearing about this since my first year in the business 25 years ago, right? That everyone's trying to get this workroom. That's how it started. Like, we'll have this special room where everybody signs up, and then no one actually wants to be in one more room, right? So like, is this really going to happen this time?
I think that there have been companies over the past 5 to 10 years that already are making it happen. If you look at an Open Door or an OfferPad, the whole point of those businesses is to create that seamless transaction. You have some of the home builders that are doing some pretty interesting things in, they're the real estate representation, they're the mortgage company as well, and they have a title JV. And so they're starting to pull together a more seamless transaction for the new home buyer. So yeah, I think it will kind of perpetually get more seamless. I don't think I don't even know if we want
truly seamless
one company, or one advisor dominating that entire transaction. I just think there's so much nuance to real estate versus mortgage in particular that I like seeing two separate advisors for those. I just like them to be very coordinated, and they can be pretty uncoordinated right now.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. So was Better, which is worse, but Better was trying to
talking about the company Better.
The company, yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
My joke was they're not better at laying people off. So they were trying to get. Sorry. Nobody's going to get that unless you look up the news headlines.
Google Better layoffs.
It's so bad.
Wow.
You'll catch the joke.
Maybe the worst layoff story.
Certainly
ever,
the most publicized worst layoff ever.
Oh my goodness.
Certainly.
Sheer incompetence. They were trying to get into the real estate space, hiring agents and sort of disrupting that. I know Rocket was
Rocket Homes.
Rocket Homes, right? So but in Better's case, they were, I can't even say that anymore. In their case, they were trying really hard. And I'm pretty sure they got rid of that entire department.
They did. Almost.
But didn't Rocket too? It's just
Rocket still has Rocket Homes, but it's not
a referral source. It's
not a big deal. And I actually think if anyone is going to be successful at integrating that whole transaction, it might be one of the big brokerages that has, a well-integrated JV with a mortgage company, a well-integrated JV with a title company.
Sure.
Like, you can create a pretty seamless experience, even as like a small to mid-sized brokerage. with those JVs. They just, a lot of times they aren't that well integrated. And like your realtors don't, or your real estate agents don't even use your JVs. So that's a little bit of a problem.
Right. Zillow's trying to figure that out. Yeah.
If anybody's going to figure out that integration, I think it might be a big brokerage. But again, I'm not even sure that like that's the best thing for the consumer at the end of the day. I think that having these two trusted advisors who like may not always agree, and that's actually a good thing, right? Like, you know, but isn't that a real estate agent might be trying to show you too much home, and that mortgage advisor is going to bring you back to earth and say, hey, look, like this is what you can afford.
Sure.
And I think that's a good playoff there.
But isn't that kind of what we have to? No. Okay. So when it goes the way it should go, not your experience, right? But isn't that kind of what we have today?
They just need to be better integrated and really, really tight communication and more seamless with the actual transaction flow, more seamless than digital. But like, yeah, I love having those two trusted advisors.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So I'll ask one more and then Keith will wrap us up on the final question here. We would be remiss, since we're also talking to a news source, about the portal wars.
Speaking of cage matches,
I have heard many rumors that homes.com is going to go ballistically crazy at Super Bowl, and with TV ads, and like, I mean, they are straight just throwing money at the industry left and right, like it's the Federal Reserve printing cash. So
it's Keith. Can I give him my email address in case they want to send some? No? All right.
What's your take on this? I mean, this is I think this is a bigger story, because
I think it's important. And apparently last night at the Grammys, I didn't watch the ad, but they gave a little preview of something.
I didn't see it.
I'll have to go check it out
on the 11th. So yeah, I mean, their presence at the last NAR meeting,
they bought the whole floor,
which was enormous. You know, we're talking with them about a bunch of stuff that's pretty interesting, and they have a model that might work a little better if if we're going to unbundle buyer's agent compensation from the seller, because they just work with the seller. And so, their model just might make more sense for the world that we might be going into. Who knows? But they are certainly throwing a ton of cash. And when you talk about cage matches, Andy Florence is a really feisty guy. And he's not afraid to throw punches. And so like, if I were Zillow or Realtor, .com, I would be paying a lot of attention to what is happening right now in terms of their willingness to spend, their approach, their go-to-market. Like they want to be number one. And I think with their model, they could be. So yeah, that's one to pay attention to for sure.
I feel like if the producers could cut to like a Rocky training scene, right, when he's like he's about to fight Dolph Lundgren, he's doing sit-ups in the barn in Russia, and then just put like their logo on it. I think that would be great.
You know, that guy scares me. Like, he is one of those people that not from the cage match part, but like, you know, he's intense, and like, I would never want to be on the wrong side of him, because he's one of those people that just I've never met him, but that
you will. He's going to be at the gathering, and I know you'll be at the gathering as well.
I'm sure we'll cross paths shortly. But he's just one of those people that he will just throw cash at something because he can and he wants to. Like, doesn't give a shit. Like, you know what? You mess with me, like, I'm just gonna, whatever it's gonna take to win, I will win. He seems like that guy.
Yeah, his turbo setting is always on turbo. For sure. Like he's ready to rock. And I think it's good. Like, hey, great.
The net effect for the industry, time will tell, but the net effect for the industry and for the human beings who buy and sell houses, I think could be a very good thing.
Yeah, agreed. And they bought some good technology in HomeSnap a couple of years ago. And so they've got some assets,
and the team. They've got some good assets there too, the team wise as well. So it's got smart people for sure.
All right. Last question. Yep. We always end on this. So if you were an agent or a brokerage, what's the one thing you'd implement in your business today to drive it forward for 2024?
Oh my goodness. It would probably have to do with and James does this a lot, I know, but like really understanding the value of the buyer's agent and making sure that you are presenting that in every conversation that you have with a potential buyer who's gonna bring you on. That we've got to get that pitch down pat. It's got to be really good. And again, the flight to quality thing, the brokerages that implement that well are going to be the ones who win over the next 12 to 24 months. And I think that's a really good thing. So like really understanding the value of the buyer's agent and making sure that we're presenting that in every conversation that we have with consumers.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Diego, thank you, my friend, for being here.
This has been great. What a pleasure. Really fun.
It was super fun to have you on and talk about, your businesses. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really interesting how you're kind of bringing it all together. It's going to educate the industry better. It's going to make agents smarter, more professional. We're big raving fans over here. So
yeah, keep gathering those infinity stones.
Get it? Gathering at the gathering and the.
I'm good at this. I'm good
really,
at this.
Yep.
Not a funny joke.
So, really appreciate it, guys.
Of course, my friend. We'll look forward to having you back soon. So, thanks.
Good to spend some time.
Take care.
It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.